First up, though, I think is the most deplorable aspect of, to use a term that is now famous thanks to Hillary Clinton, but Maxine Waters, a congressman from California, last weekend said something pretty darn terrible. And I want to quote it for you because to have a public official say something like this is beyond the pale. And she was addressing a crowd in Los Angeles on Saturday, June 23rd. So it's on YouTube, so you can see video of it all over the internet. If you see anybody from that cabinet, the Trump cabinet, in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd and you push back on them. And you tell them they are not welcome anymore, anywhere. Now, how do you like that for inciting violence, assault, and riot? I don't know how you interpret it any other way. To tell people to get a crowd together in a private area, gasoline, a restaurant, shopping, and push back on someone, that's inciting violence in my book, and assault and all the other terrible things associated with political violence. I can't believe that she's a member of the House in good standing. And to that end, Judicial Watch just doesn't wait around. We filed an ethics complaint against Maxine Waters with the House Ethics Committee, specifically the Office of Congressional Ethics, which is the body that preliminarily looks at ethics complaints and then refers it over to the House Ethics Committee. And there's a rule in the House, and it's a basic rule. It's a good rule. A member, a delegate, or a resident commissioner, officer, or employee of the House shall conduct himself at all times in a manner that shall reflect credibly on the House. So when you, as a congressman, encourage individuals to create crowds who will push back on President Trump's cabinet members, I'm reading from our complaint, at private business establishments and in seemingly trying to prevent these cabinet officials from obtaining basic necessities without fear or assault of violence. She seems to be in violation of that rule, mandating that you can engage in behavior that reflects credibly on the House of Representatives. Does inciting violence, assault, and riot reflect credibly on the House of Representatives? Of course not. And there's this virus going through the left right now where they think it's okay to assault elected officials in public. You had, this wasn't an assault, but Sarah Sanders Huckabee last weekend was asked to leave a restaurant in Lexington, Virginia, the Red Hen restaurant in Lexington, Virginia, and the owner asked her to leave for supposedly moral reasons. And not only that, but reportedly the owner then followed Sarah Sanders across the street to the restaurant which she went to harass her there. Now, subsequent to this issue, and subsequent to Maxine Waters' comments, the Secret Service announced, or it was announced, the Secret Service would be providing Sarah Sanders protection at her home. Obviously, she's protected already at the White House. And I guarantee you that the Secret Service, they don't lightly provide protection to additional individuals at the Secret Service. There's got to be threats. There's got to be something serious going on because A, it's a budget issue, B, it's a capacity issue in terms of having the bodies necessary to defend someone 24/7 and protect someone 24/7. And I guarantee you that in assessing the threat environment for Sarah Sanders, the Secret Service looked at what Maxine Waters said on the Hill and factored that into its decision to provide Sarah Sanders protection. And I guarantee you there's all sorts of other threats that we don't know about and probably shouldn't know about that the Secret Service is aware of. Now, there have been other reports that a ICE official had a decapitated animal carcass left on their front porch. These leftists have been putting out the personal residential addresses of ICE agents up on the internet, gathering them and making them easily accessible in one place. and we have a House of Representatives member encouraging attacks on Trump's cabinet officials. So now it's up to the House of Representatives to decide whether or not they think it's appropriate for a member to incite violence. And what are they going to do about it? Well, the House can do several things. They can do nothing. They can reprimand her. They can censure her. Or they can expel her. I personally think this is the type of behavior that warrants strong consideration of expulsion from the House of Representatives. And the House has got to decide whether or not it's going to allow itself to be a platform for its members to incite violence. I don't care what you say, because the left has said that this is just a protest she was encouraging. Look, we have a First Amendment right to protest government actions. You should protest anything you really want within reason. There are time, place, and restrictions on protests, but generally, for instance, Jeff Sessions was out in California this week, and he was giving a speech. There were protesters outside that speech. That's great. Founding Fathers would have loved that. The right to protest government officials in a safe manner. But what we're talking about is people going onto private property, creating crowds to push back on cabinet officials. Now just think about this. You're out shopping with your family, or you're getting gasoline with your family, trying to buy food for your family, and a crowd confronts you in a private space and pushes back. Does that create any safety concerns for you? Of course it does. And you don't need to be hit in order to be assaulted. You don't need to be hit in order for a protest to be violent and have the threat of violence behind it. You don't have to be damaged or hurt to face fear from rioting. And that's why rioting is obviously illegal. So this is what Maxine Waters, a House member, is promoting against President Trump. And everyone, there's this theory that Maxine Waters, she's crazy, she's kind of a nut. You can't pay attention to what she says. She's not crazy. She knows what she's doing, and she needs to be held accountable. And I suggest that you call your members of Congress and ask them what they're going to do about this. Are they going to allow their House to be used as a platform to incite violence against other government officials? Because as you know, the instinct of the House leadership of both political parties is to do nothing about Maxine Waters. And that's why Judicial Watch filed an ethics complaint to get the process in place. So if nothing is done, we can't just say, well, everyone just talked about doing something, but no one really put their nose to the grindstone to get something done and to get the process going. So at least we've got the process going. Now, I'm not naive about how it's going to turn out, but we've got to take a stand, don't we? We've got to take a stand. And I think this is pretty serious stuff. If I were the president, I would be directing the Secret Service and the other law enforcement agencies at the federal level that provide protection for his senior officials, his cabinet officials, and maybe other folks in the White House, to really step it up in terms of maybe they need to provide more protection. And I guarantee you, when folks like, it's funny, EPA Director Scott Pruitt is being criticized for having excessive security protection. I guarantee you there have been terrible threats against him that warrant the increased protection. And when the protection levels are increased as a result of threats by people like Maxine Waters, you can bet the left is going to criticize the extra costs. This is a serious situation. I think that we need to take a stand against what Maxine Waters did. And when you've got major public policy figures and media figures on the left going on television, comparing the president to Hitler, comparing federal law enforcement to Nazis on a regular basis, not because they're committing any abuses, just because they're enforcing the rule of law on the border by arresting people and jailing people who break the law. and calling them Nazis because the results of those arrests result in breaking up a family, which happens all across the country to citizens and non-citizens alike when parents commit crimes, and they're calling ICE agents Nazis? That's dangerous to do. It's dangerous to do. And so Judicial Watch is going to stand fast for the rule of law against political violence. Against political violence. It's sad that I have to put this on our panoply, put this on our plate as part of Judicial Watch's activities, standing against political violence. Thank you, Maxine Waters, and thank you, the fellow travelers on the left who promote it. Now, I'm sure there are people on the right who say things that are inappropriate too. But between the Antifa movement, the anarchists, and Maxine Waters, and what we're seeing happening right now, the left is the chief proponent of political violence or the threat of violence to get their ends right now. And as I said, we got to stand against it. So Judicial Watch is doing its part. So, boy, that's something that I prefer not to have to talk about on the weekly update, political violence. But that's the reality of modern day America because the left has become unhinged with the election of a politician they don't like.